This is the Kitchen Sink WP podcast episode 486.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. We have the technology. The technology.
Why, hello everybody, this is Adam Zerver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. We have one event next weekend, WordCamp Montclair, a single-day camp on the 24th of June up in New Jersey. I say up because it's north of me. Anyway, I might go. There's a chance, but then again, I might not, only because my buddy Dustin from your website engineer is apt to be in North Carolina. So we'll see what happens there, if I make it or not. All right, moving on in the news, two things to talk about here. First and foremost, the private equity firm that used to own Liquid Web, or had the majority investment, has changed hands. So now One Equity Partners acquired the Liquid Web, the company and all the things underneath it. So now it's a new holding company called CloudOne Digital. And so there's that. That happened a few months back. I guess I kind of got buried a little bit in the news, but there you go. Also in the news, Google sold its domain business to Squarespace. Yeah, I'm kidding. No, I'm not kidding about the sale. Kidding about the Voldemorts. Yeah, Squarespace, it's a platform. It works for people. Great. Moving on. But yeah, Google sold all of its domain. I guess those Google domains, you can get them for cheap. As a registrar, they sold all that business or selling that business to Squarespace. Interesting. A lot of people not happy about it. A lot of people moving to Cloudflare or other registrars. I still prefer Hover for myself. It's where I keep all the things. So, to each his own on that realm of the world, and do what you need to do, but now you know. All right, moving on to segment 2, the meat potatoes of this week's episode. But first, a word from this week's sponsor.
If you're a content creator like me, then you're probably in need of an easy way to increase user engagement and reduce user attrition. Lucky for me, I found Bread and Butter IO. What does Bread and Butter IO do? Well, they help small businesses on WordPress to convert more visitors into customers. How, you ask? By making it easy to implement single sign-on, aka SSO, which will future-proof your website. A few of the major features that Bread and Butter provide are the ability to use SSO for content gating and lead capture, as well as universal newsletter sign-up. Bread and Butter also integrates seamlessly with other tools like Zapier, Slack, Google Analytics, and your email service provider. Like analytics? Well, Bread and Butter has you covered there too. With the ability to track page views, see where the users came from, and track the user journey. Oh, and all that data fully exportable. With full white glove service and 24/7 support, Bread and Butter IO is impressive. With prices starting at free, yes, free, you really have nothing to lose in trying it out. So head over to breadandbutter.io to learn more and sign up today.
And thanks once again to Bread and Butter IO for sponsoring this week's episode. Really do appreciate having you on board. All right, moving on, segment 2, all about load testing and load balancing. Well, Amazon had a major outage apparently last week, Amazon Web Services, and that apparently broke a bunch of websites and apps, McDonald's and Taco Bell, per my kids telling me. Anyway, there's a link in the show notes over at The Verge if you want to read about that as well. So I got to thinking, how would we in the WordPress space, offering hosting, managed hosting, do in case of some large outage? What would we do as well? And some digging and down many rabbit holes of questioning led me to learning more about load testing and load balancing. So first and foremost, what's the difference? Well, on a high level view, load testing is a process of evaluating how a system such as websites or applications perform under different levels of simulated user traffic and workload. Load balancing, on the other hand, is a technique used to distribute incoming network traffic across multiple servers or resources to optimize performance, enhance availability, and prevent overload on individual resources. Okay, so those are very technical verbiage, not technical, I guess it's very clear-cut, defined definitions I found online, yes. But putting load balancing in simpler terms, and since both of my boys work in the food service industry at the moment, now imagine you own a very popular restaurant and you only have one chef. As more and more customers come in, the chef gets overwhelmed with the number of orders and takes longer to prepare each dish. That leads to delays, frustrated customers, and a poor dining experience. Now, let's introduce load balancing to the restaurant. Instead of having just one chef, you hire additional chefs and divide the workload among them. Now, each chef can now handle a certain number of orders at a time. When a customer arrives, a host, or the system, decides which chef will take an order based on who's available and not too busy. This way, the workload is evenly distributed among the chefs and the dishes are prepared faster, right? Now, in the context of a website, the servers are like chefs and the incoming requests from users are like the orders. Now, load balancing ensures that each server receives an equal number of requests and can process them efficiently. This helps to prevent any single server from becoming overwhelmed and ensures that websites remain responsive and available to all users. I believe that is a pretty good way of describing it. I wrote that out and I was thinking this makes sense to me at least. Okay, so now how does this tie into managed clients' websites on your hosting and server packages? Well, it would have to be a backup web server, no pun intended. So now the reason you want to have a backup web server would be two basic reasons to have this in place. One, high availability. Now, by having a backup web server, you minimize the risk of downtime for your website. It's an easy solution there. If and when, if your primary server fails, your backup server can seamlessly take over and continue serving the website to your users. This will, of course, ensure that the website stays up and available even during server failures or during maintenance of server A when it goes to server B. Okay. Number two, the second reason to have this in place would be disaster recovery. Having a backup web server is super important as a disaster recovery strategy. In the event of a major data loss on your primary server, you can quickly switch over and you have things ready to go and no one's the wiser, right? Okay, so now I know you're thinking, how hard is this to set up? And I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy. Again, it's not hard, but it does need some intermediate to advanced level needs of knowledge in the 5 following areas. Okay, first and foremost, server admin and networking. Number 2, overall load balancing concepts, which I know basic stuff on that case. Number 3, database configuration and replication. We know that database configuration and replications in WordPress can be interesting and difficult, especially if you're running an e-commerce store, right? Number 4, file syncing, which is also an issue, like how does it get synced back and forth? And number 5, monitoring and troubleshooting, all those things as well. So the question that is now, do I need this level of infrastructure or you? I don't know about your situation, but I know I do not. But I'm sure there are some agencies out there that probably do. And that said, if you are one of those, I would love to talk to you about this as well, because I think it'd be a great case study. And then again, not to say that I don't need it, I just don't have it in place, or I guess I'm saying this right now off the top of my head, that the services I use, the companies that I resell, if you will, have some of the stuff in place already. Now, they have the backups, they have disaster recovery, they are relatively highly available, but I don't have a separate server set up for any of my sites that could be a failover based on a downtime. Something I'm interested in doing, maybe, but right now not a priority in my life for what I do. But I just thought we would talk about this in a broad stroke, in a high level view. Hope that's helpful to you, because if Amazon can go down, then anybody can go down. That's what I'm saying here. Okay, so moving right along. Segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip is a plugin. It's called Say What. It's an easy-to-use plugin that allows you to alter the strings of your site without editing WordPress core. I did this as a test. I used this in conjunction with the other plugin from last week that let me change some text on the site. The other one worked better, but this one actually worked as well, just a little different interface. Wanted to share this one as well. It's called Say What. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. So there you have it. If you have any questions, then we wrap it up here. Go ahead and send it in via email, adam@KitchensinkWP.com, or use the speak pipe function of the website. If you want to support the show, that would be awesome, really would be. You can become a Patreon, KitchensinkWP.com/Patreon. If you want to sponsor the show, like Bread and Butter IO did, you can do that too. There's a form on the website. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right? Bye-bye.